Hi, Rich Karuba for bowlingball.com. I want to talk to you about the bowlingball.com BowlVersity Q A, Part 2. We started about a month ago doing some of the questions that typically get sent in as comments under articles posted in BowlVersity section of our website at bowlingball.com. And this is a continuation. We're going to share the 3 questions and give you a little bit about the answers that are posted in the corresponding article, bowlingball.com BowlVersity Q A Part 2. So you can find it in the editorial section at BowlVersity or just under the Everyone Posts section. So I hope some of these questions we can answer them reasonably well enough for you. And you will also have the article to refer to if you would like to read specifically what the language is in answering these particular questions. And also, we kind of target these questions in general, and we've selected them from maybe bowlers ranging from 180 average and under, but we highly recommend that anybody, no matter how skilled you are, you're certainly welcome to read and share information with us, your particular responses, because I don't have a lot of time in these articles to answer these questions in depth and really cover a whole range of things that pertain to the questions. We invite comments from you, the general public, to do the same. So you can post your comments, and if you want to elaborate or share your thoughts and ideas and experiences, you're certainly welcome to do so, and we encourage you. Thank you. First, let's get right into it. 3 questions. First, which is most important? A bowling ball cover stock or a drilling layout? Well, that's a pretty easy one. The cover stock is always the most important thing to consider when you're going to looking at a new bowling ball, for example. Cover stock is where the tires meet the road, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. The one thing that's in constant contact with the lane surface is the bowling ball cover stock. And the material of that cover stock will help determine the bowling ball symmetry. It will help determine the friction factor on the lane surface. It will help determine with the core design and with the dynamics built into the ball, it will through the core shape and so on, it'll determine the overall ball motion. Also, the cover stock should match to the lane conditions you bowl most frequently. You have a variety. You have regular urethane. Of course, you have plastic cover stocks. You have reactive resin, and you have several types there. You have the solid, the pearl, and the hybrid reactive cover stocks now on the market. So there's some great choices, as well as particle cover stocks, by the way. You have some great choices in cover stocks to match the lane conditions and match heavy oil, medium lanes, kind of medium dry or very dry lane surfaces. So the cover stock is your number one most important thing. The drilling layout, all that will help you do is control the length and the hook potential ratings. It'll help alter them so you can fine-tune the ball motion. Cover stock number 1, okay? Next question, and this is one that I really do not enjoy discussing. That sounds funny. What are the primary differences between symmetrical and asymmetrical bowling balls? Well, all that symmetry stuff is important for the engineers to understand, maybe the pro shop operators. I guess what if I wanted to boil it down to you, and there's a little bit more technical information in the article, but if I wanted to boil it down to what's important is, the first thing is just a relationship with the measurements or the values and radius of gyration, the RG of a bowling ball from between the Y and the Z axes. And if they're more than 5 degrees apart, it's an asymmetric ball. If they're less than 5 degrees in total differential, then it's a symmetrical bowling ball. And USBC proved that after holes are drilled in any bowling ball, if it starts out symmetrical, it's going to end up slightly asymmetrical. If the bowling ball by design is asymmetrical to begin with, then the degree of asymmetry rises when you, depending on the layout, of course, but when you put holes in the ball, it will become very asymmetrical. And typically, the more symmetrical the ball is, the more controllable is the ball motion. And the more asymmetrical is the bowling ball, the more angular at the break point is the ball motion. So if you're looking for a ball that's going to get down the lane and give you a pretty sharp break on the back end, you want to start with an asymmetrically designed bowling ball, okay? And then the layout pattern and so on, and the overall hook potential rating of the ball will determine just how sharply or aggressively the ball will react on the back end of the lane. But start with asymmetrical. But if you want control, which I recommend for 90% of you out there, you should have more bowling balls in your equipment arsenal that control the mid lane and the back end. You don't need a big severe hook on the back end. What you need is a gradual motion you can depend on, particularly on wet dry lane conditions or on very difficult lane conditions like USBC blue or the white patterns. You want control. You don't want a ball to skid and flip and hook unpredictably and you miss the pocket. It might be pretty seeing it hook at a hard angle, but control is more important. So symmetrical balls are very popular, very important. But if you have to get an asymmetric ball, you realize that you're going to get a higher flare potential rating in that ball, and it'll produce a sharper back-end reaction. And that's about all I want to say on it. All the information about the total differential, the differential ratio, intermediate differential, all those things that describe the symmetry of a bowling ball in ball motion studies, I kind of refer to that in the article, so you can read it, make your own determination. But remember, a key to ball motion is the differential ratio, and it's simply defined as the intermediate differential divided by the total differential, and the larger the differential ratio, simply the greater degree of asymmetry a bowling ball core possesses. Let's move on. Question number 3. Which are the most effective ranges of grit pads to use when you're altering bowling ball surfaces? That's a good question. And what I really like about it is that bowlers are waking up to realizing that these cover stocks the manufacturers produce today can be altered. You can change the surface texture, and you can fine-tune the length potential and even the hook potential on the back end. You can help fine-tune your ball motion control by altering your ball surface. The cover stocks are very versatile, so don't be bashful. Select the one that you think is going to match best to your oil pattern to start with. Now, the grit pads go from 500 to 4,000. Actually, they go from 360, and you can get some very, very fine pads too as well. But typically 500, very high grit. The low grit, the rougher the surface, and the fine grit is a 4,000. It's a higher grit rating. Now, I always like to see bowlers start right in the middle, 1,500, 2,000. It's going to give you a best of both worlds. You're going to get bite in the front end of the lane when it's heavy oil, so the ball will make its first transition in the hook phase in the mid lane. And you have a smooth enough surface to store energy, so when you get down the lane at the break point, it can make a decisive motion or a good motion toward the pocket, something that you can control the lane on the back end with. But if you have very heavy oil and you need help on the front end, then you want to go down to a lower grit. And of course, if you want to really get a long skid rating, to increase the skid rating, you want to use a fine grit, drier lanes, medium dry lanes, and so on, to get down the lane and conserve energy from the break point to the pocket. A lot of the manufacturers now use multiple layering techniques. So they use multiple grit pads. They might start with 500, go to 1,000, then 1,500, or 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, and so on. And those type of layered techniques will give you a lot of texture underneath, and then you fine-tune it right on top of it. So we have some charts posted in various articles at BowlVersity about how to, which kind of grit surfaces you want to prepare your ball to meet certain lane conditions. It's stuff you can experiment with and share with your pro shop professional to help you decide on what's the best way to go with the equipment that you have. But the grit pad ranges effectively from 500 to 4,000. We have them available here at bowlingball.com. You can pick them up in pro shops if you like to do some of the work yourself. But the best thing to always do if you don't have a high-speed ball spinner at home is every 60 games or so, get your ball into the pro shop for a quick screening and resurface job. Not only cleans the surface of the ball, but you retexture it to gain that shape and that ball motion that you expect from that bowling ball you purchased and you use frequently on lane conditions where you bowl most often. I hope some of this information helps you. We want to thank you for visiting.